Hi Neil.
Hey, there was a presentation given at the Diff Hospitality and Travel Special Interest Group of a company called Vouched,
Ah,
who is doing MCP identity. They have a
nice.
spec out. They have a spec out, and unfortunately, they thought they were talking to a non-Diff trust over IP audience. Well, quick. So I'm the sort of like there's maybe two of us in a SIG. Saying, you need to come and talk to us about this, and the
I'd
Diff
love
groups
to, love to.
on
Yeah,
agents because they're basically putting, up yeah, adding they got a public spec out, MCPI, where they're adding identity. Now, what they were showing was using ID and password as a credential to give an
I
agent
see.
something, so that they put a wrapper around that box. So that's something they treat as if it's a. I said, that's not a real VC, is it? They said, yeah, yeah, it's a virtual VC. Okay, so, but they do have a product. Um, that's incorporated into an MCP server for a service, right?
Right, right.
So that they can sign stuff, et cetera, using did web or did key. Because it's a hey, we're doing SSI, and then they go off and talk about IDs and passwords, and they're going, huh? Anyway, so I've got the tech lead and CEO that did the presentation. I'm gonna ping them, and I'll include you. And either we do it under trust or IP or diff. I mean, there's three groups with lots of overlaps on this kind of stuff, so it'd probably be
Yeah,
good to a general
yeah,
audience
yeah.
and get them to just say, okay, now you need to talk to, the deep SSI people. We're doing AI agent stuff, so I will follow up on that. I'll put the presentation up once it finishes the Zoom recording from over on diff, and I'll just paste it here.
Very good. Good. Um, Let me see.
Anybody else showing up today?
Yeah, it's been
I,
away 2 weeks. I'm in a another conference also online. I like online conferences. You can skip them as you wish.
Well, IIW had to do that for at least two
Yeah, I
sessions.
actually
And
enjoy the online one better because you got more
yeah, it
chance
was,
to speak and listen.
yeah, no, I thought it was, and everything's recorded. So, I mean, Trust of IP just did the 5-year seminar or whatever it was.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, the symposium. Very
yeah,
nice. Yeah.
symposium. So, I mean, I can't blow 2 whole days, but I'm going to go back and watch the videos when I'm having a glass of, shall we say, a sparkly beverage, um, as opposed to spending, 12 hours, 2 days and stuff that, you know,
Yeah,
uh,
that also allows you to because IW, the problem is that there's a search you have to happen within a few minutes. And then, there's a conflict, the rooms are noisy and that sort of thing. And online actually give you a chance to go to multiple sessions on the same timeline. Same,
yeah,
makes
they
a lot
just
of
pop.
things easy.
Yeah, you know, I mean, yeah, you need to get together for every year or two to have a glass with the person you're actually working with.
Maybe,
To
maybe, yeah, maybe we
Yeah,
can do either like a half, like one of them online, and then the other half um it's the online session. That would be good. I like that.
Nikki, how are you?
Yeah,
All good, thanks. How are you guys?
very good, very good.
I'm I'm discovering how many ways ChatGPT can give me the wrong JSON SQL generator.
At least you know what you're looking at.
Well,
I
yeah,
asked it to, I
I
asked
told
it to
you,
create a diagram and it gave me mermaid code, which was
yeah.
incorrect, but I couldn't figure out because I don't know well, I don't know any coding, so I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. So,
Yesterday, I tried a challenge. I print out this TSP message all coded, with this base 64 string and ask the chatbot to decode it for me and verify that it's correct. Actually, do the signature verification. It doesn't know how to go grab the public key from the did document without me prompting at all. Um, it figured out how to do the Caesar translation, so go back to the binary. It did quite a few things after like maybe 7, 8 different trials, but in the end, yesterday didn't succeed. So I'm gonna see if today we'll figure out a way to verify the
Well,
signature.
yeah, no, it's very,
That's
very,
complicated. Yeah.
it's a very iterative process because it's not using a deterministic way of solving the problems, So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, it beats it. Let's put it this way: it's like having at least someone else in the room you can have a discussion with about what you're trying to do, as opposed to stumbling
Yeah.
around and does this look
Yeah.
right? No, actually, Neil, this is wrong. And the biggest like, no, okay, fine.
Yeah. All right. We may not get a lot of people. Let's put the agenda sheet on and just a quick antitrust policy notice and trust of IPs, IPR policy notice um, on the top. And then the agenda I prepared yesterday is essentially two things we want to maybe, recap some of the news items, and then I did a little bit of organization of the topic we're going about. I think this is related to really defining what we should focus on, right? We've been working on a few separate things. Some of them are reasonably well defined. I think we have at least two. One relate to specing a method to run these agent protocols over TSP and why we want to do that. Second one is maybe formulating some kind of a trust framework. And maybe related to that, I thought expanding our scope into a area we may not be entirely familiar with is what I call beyond data management. So this is, about behavior, etc. And over that, I organized our past discussions into a document, so we kind of we can, use the document to keep track and making progress. Um, Let me see, any kind of follow-up on the symposium, and that's what I have. And then we have maximum two more meetings before Christmas break. Um, so we should make a decision. Do we have two more meetings or one? And what do we want to do for those two meetings? And that's what I have on the agenda. Any feedback, comments on the agenda itself?
On this point.
Looking good? Okay.
Yeah, I think
So
Wenjing, like I think it's really great to think beyond data management. So I think it's more about also, like dividing that into multiple things because usually the LLMs or even small language models, they rely on data, like feeding the data basically. So data, more of data, collection, if you will, and
yeah.
then like disbursement of or so it's more about like mostly two things, like relying on inputs and then outputs. But I think more to that comes like whether like the analysis side is being done properly or up to the expectations of the requester or the query. So I think like more maybe the data analysis is one where there's a lot of improvements to be made. also the predictions, the quality of the predictions. So they, um, like the predictions basically are sometimes so off. So I think, bifurcating this maybe into those elements like how to enhance the data prediction capabilities as well as the data analysis.
Yeah, great comment. So we'll get back to that. And I just, here just we just have a link. We'll get into sort of recap what we discussed before and see other areas we could also think about focus on. Um, so let me, if that's okay, we'll backtrack a little bit, and then we get to that. Hopefully, we have the half an hour for that topic. Um, so let me backtrack to what is the in the news items, etc. What I thought. So we've been away for 2 weeks, and one, of course, a big item is what the symposium we just did. And then a lot of new releases for, I don't know if the guy follow or, test them out, but I would encourage, like a lot of people have their secret test suite, and then they will see, the progress of in different areas on these new releases. So both um, Gemini 3 definitely made a big splash. It caused a lot of at least a stock market movement. Anyway, those are, I think, very good things to keep track of. Um, Let me see. So uh, Sankarash also posted his writing. I read the first page, but not the whole thing, about guardians, stewards, trustees, etc. So for delegation and so these concepts we have it captured in our document as the existing approaches. So one of them is, of course, have these different roles, parties, or I think last time we used the word, the fourth party, as a different roles that could be built into the system. So that's also captured there. We should probably do a little deep dive in each of them. Um, any other news anyone want to share in 2 weeks away? Hi, Jim and Daryl, welcome. All right. So if not, I don't know, any follow-up discussions on the symposium?
Not at this point.
No? Let me see. One of the I thought the symposium format that we couldn't get too much on is the workshop and uh, that a lot of that is probably related to sort of like I was thinking because I volunteered to do a workshop, but then I realized the amount of setup and environment I need to bring up to do sort of a hands-on stuff is very difficult to do for me, but also for someone who hasn't been sort of day to day doing development to actually get hands on within what like 2 or 3 hours of time is pretty challenging. So maybe a more AI driven environment would be easier that we could lower this um, the threshold so that a lot of things that we thought difficult to do, like there's always a complaint about GitHub and or our the spec up that sort of thing. Maybe that would be a good thing that will make the hands-on portion a lot easier. for non-developers. That's a thought. Maybe that will be the Christmas special. Okay. So if not, maybe we'll jump into without delay into this topic, and I'm gonna just share the document here. Maybe make it a bigger. 50, yeah. So I didn't add any new, hopefully not new information, but mostly organizing in our discussion around motivation, and then uh, sort of learnings and critiques, known approaches, and I've listed all the ones that it was ever mentioned. Can add more to it, and then um, there are two general approaches in the at least for AI research on this or related topic. The two approaches are alignment and guardrails. And so I thought it would be good to sort of discuss whether these make sense to us, any kind of a new categories, examples we can put on to before we jump into like say, hey, this is a solution we want to work on. So that's what I have prepared, and hopefully you can use that link and be able to get in there. Um, and for today, I was just asking, we could um, maybe focus your, mind on the first question that the basic assumption is that no matter what, right? Even if we do what we call, I think we should, that, micro sharing or sometimes called context specific sharing, and maybe do ZKP, etc. Um, you would still be massively sharing a lot of data if you want to use a AI agent. Uh, I think agent, the more convenient you want from the agent, the more you will have to tell them. And regardless of whether you trust the agent or not. And that's just necessity. And is that the argument, clear and we agree? And if it is, then there's a high motivation for us to say, well, beyond managing what we share, we need to do more. That's the premises, and see if you would all agree with this statement that in order to have useful and powerful agent to help us to do useful tasks and benefit us, we need to prioritize solving the problem of controlling its behavior rather than what I share. Because the amount of thing we can sort of avoid sharing is, I think, limited. Is not a majority. That's the point of view. I don't know whether that's right or wrong, and uh, maybe I should stop here and see you have strong opinions on this.
Yeah, looking at the travel profile stuff and all the use cases that run around it, one of the things that sort of tripped across in a couple of cases, and one of the key actual live use cases was John Jordan and his flight, after he became a quadriplegic. So I talked to John and walked through the process in great depth, and it struck me that what we may have is a series of stage disclosures, right? With some information being like raw information, like what's my actual medical history? Generally speaking, you don't want to share that, period. But if you had an agent that's going to privately sit in a sandbox and say, okay, give me a context. I want to, I want to take an air, I want to fly somewhere. I want to do this kind of active sport or whatever else, is to look at your, let's call them the raw, deep personal information and derive a context for the needs you have and preferences for a specific context. So have a look at, what I've got here. And yeah, I've got a spinal problem. Say, okay, so you're going to fly. So you're going to possibly need a wheelchair. So I recommend that, what you hand to a travel agent in this case is that I'm going to need the following assistance, right? So rather than disclose the underlying cause and privacy information, you disclose, okay, I need the following service. So you would have your private agent generate that context for you, given your input, saying, okay, I want to do this and this and this and this. Have a look at my deep personal information and create a neutral context that is very narrow in scope to that particular purpose. And I'm only going to hand across that information to the actual end agent. So,
Yeah,
we
so
took
that's
across.
minimizing per contest, in this case, contest travel. And because within this contest, a lot of informations are irrelevant, and therefore you don't share those. So that's a given.
Right.
Um, I would uh, personally argue that it will still be a lot of information. So that once you share those information, because you need to share those, like you're gonna need a wheelchair. You don't have to say why, but that information it's shared. Um,
Yeah, I think that, and I can't remember, it wasn't me, someone said, if you want personal service, you need to disclose a lot of personal information. So there's no avoiding that. So
there's no way, right?
ZKPs are not going to help you because if you want personal service, you got to say, look, this is really, here's something I actually need, or here are my actual preferences. So, if you've got malicious actors out there who are going to, take all that information and try and identify you, which they're getting smarter and smarter, is the only there is not a technical solution to avoiding collaboration of uh, relying parties to find out who you actually are.
Yeah.
I just
Maki first, then Nikki.
Yeah, actually, I think it's really interesting, what Neil has said, because, like to reach that point of hyper-personalization, you would need to at least rely on historical data. So I think, the LLMs should become more intelligent in terms of, like requesting confirmations as well to previous, assumptions or previous, like preferences you have stated. So I think every now and then, for example, like if you have a health profile or you have for example, a traveler profile, the LLM should be, like proactive in terms of asking you, is it your, for example, this is your stance with respect to this topic. This is your preference with respect to that topic. I think there should be some sort of, you know, queries or follow-ups from the LLM every now and then on your preferences. So, for example, having a signal that, do you still, for example, prefer food X? Like maybe it can send you such, notifications every now and then. So I think the more it knows about you, the more it acts like an assistant. It will be able to address your problems better and even, like help you through an agentic route to conduct, like let's say, transactions or purchases with limited, like inputs. Uh, I do agree with you that it will still rely on your like understanding the context, as also Neil pointed. So, but I think the more it interacts with you, like two-sided communication versus like only relying on you to provide the inputs and continuous confirmation of your preferences through like questions or queries that the LLM send you every now and then to confirm whether you still stand in the same direction with respect to your preferences.
Okay, I'm going to summarize what you just said as you. It seems like you are describing the agent's behavior. The agent should do such and such, and that would be behavior control. So, for instance, a digital ID does not do anything like that. A delegation doesn't do anything like that, right? It would be a new topic, and so you would be, I think, put mostly on the yes over here agreeing with this statement that we should solve a separate problem, which is controlling the agent's behavior.
Yes, it is, and also like the existing LLMs, like you have memory, for example, as also Nikki pointed. So, for example, like speaking about GPT-5, let's say, it can like have a historical record of your preferences with respect to different things based on the queries you've like interacted with the LLM. So I think even without a pretty advanced agentic situation the LLM can still be, able to send you some queries every now and then. Like, for example, do you still like this, for example, product? Do you still like this, for example, thing, etc.? So I think it can actually, interact better with you. And it's all based on consent. Like, for example, maybe, someone will not want to disclose like the actual preferences. So it depends in terms of whether you're taking consent or not.
Nikki.
It might be better to have Jim's comment now because it's in the flow of this kind of thought worm, and then I'll go.
Okay, Jim first then.
Sure, thank you, ma'am. Yeah, I actually tend to disagree. Being involved in the Linux Foundation Agency project where we're doing identity and auditing, controlling behaviors represents different parameters you're collecting, not only in context of is it behaving properly, um, but behaving in terms of correct function of latency of these other things. I think inadvertently it would tend to get us outside the scope of what is ToIP's missions around trust framework and identity and the like to get into other parameters concerning just model behavior or agent behavior relative to the model and and MCP reliability and topics like that. That's just my thought.
So the argument would be about the scope of trust of IP. So you will not necessarily say this is unnecessary work, but it will be not done in trust of IP.
Yeah, scope creep is a good way to put it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Let me see. Nikki, you want to pick up from here?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, this question is fundamentally about trust, isn't it? We know that in order to get any service, no matter how it's delivered, we need to there's this kind of triangle that I often use with clients between value at the top, privacy on the left-hand bottom side, and security on the right-hand side. And generally, the more privacy you the more value you get. And the same is true in terms of the more security you see, the more friction you remove from the interaction, and the smoother it is to spend money generally, the less your security. And then there's obviously a privacy security balance to achieve. So that's the exact reason why we focused on the relationships, this kind of cyber physical system that we're developing where we have relationships through agents with different parties, companies, individuals, sometimes very far back in the kind of digital supply chain or the AI value chain. There's a content moderator somewhere in Africa, and he or she determines sets of data that are permissible and classifies or labels data. So, I feel like I need to do some work taking the relationship guides that we built and thinking about what that means for the trust framework. Because, Jim, I really think this is kind of at the core of what trust frameworks are about. So, could I just quickly share a screen, a quick snapshot of the relationship facets?
Yes, go ahead.
And and we're all of us thinking a lot more thank goodness, about SSI or decentralized identity and decentralized tech as relational because it is all about the edges as opposed to the nodes. It's about that contextualization of what we're doing. And when I built the relationship guides, what I did was I looked at psychology and sociology about different types of relationships in different types of communities. So if you think about one type of relationship, which I did look into, which is the relationship between humans and animals, pets. I don't know how many of you have a pet in the home, but you know, I've got two cats at the moment. We used to have a dog. He was a big dog. If he wanted to bite me, he would have really hurt. He could have probably killed me. Um, but you build a relationship with the animal and you learn to recognize and understand what they're saying in inverted commas. And you have a reciprocal relationship of looking after each other. He's a guard dog. I'll take him for a walk each day and give him some food and so forth. So I it's the quality of relationships and how they're managed. And it, I mean, obviously, there were two relationship guides, and one was entangled, which was a lot more mutual. But this is the human centric guide. And I just feel like policies, controls, guardrails, customer experience, all of these things go together to build that relationship that whether we like it or not, uh, even if we're not anthropomorphizing it, which we will tend to do when we use natural language, that's just a psychological fact. You actually use a different part of your brain when you speak to something as opposed to writing things down. So I um, I feel like there's maybe a piece of work that might, if you guys agree, be useful is to take this and think about what that might mean in governance and in tech at the different layers and how trust over IP, when we're thinking about the agent framework that Eric's put forward, when we're thinking about how we use TSP for communications or DIDCOM for communications, when we think about the kind of popping out of the relationship into conflict resolution, how that could work, just seeing if there are some touch points in this because I have spent over 20 years working with this stuff with big organizations and you're right. There are no technical controls. It's all in the governance, it's all in the contracts, and the understanding and the relationship between the parties and the actors and tools that are part of that relationship. So I'm interested in what you guys think.
I think I basically tend to agree. It's the question of how do we, what kind of the tools that Trust IP can help develop such that we would be able to maintain, manage such kind of relationship that is useful to us, while still enjoying the benefits of, agentic AI. So we can have the benefit, but also be able to manage the relationship, right? So today, most of the web services, the relationship is very one-sided, and we felt a lot of, things we don't like. And what kind of tools are necessary in order to balance that relationship so that we could benefit um, and, uh, um, and feel protected and enjoy the benefit, etc. And that's I think that's what the question was about is sort of a digital ID and potentially um, the original scope of a trust of IP in would it be sufficient? And I think
Mm.
that's why we come back to the question, if no matter what you do, even let's say all the goals that we want to do are fully satisfied, we will still end up in a place where we are sharing lots of data and we have very little to say because we have no way to sort of maybe the word control is too strong, influence the behavior of the agent. In the end, we want to influence the behavior of the agent, right? Is that seems like a logical conclusion? If we wanted to, reach that goal, you will need to do that. Um,
Mm. Yeah, and it flows both ways also. Developers of agents and services that depend on agents, they don't want you using it for illegal purposes. They don't want you, you know, creating risk for their business. And so I think one of the aspects of relationships that is worth exploring is not always seeing like the AI and the agents as the enemy. I know we've discussed guardian agents and things like that, but um, the, there's a kind of there's a mutual thing, isn't there, that's
right,
going on
right,
here,
yeah.
at terms of at a basic level, terms of use, which, it applies to any digital service. So
Yeah.
it's two-way.
Yeah, so Jeff has a good comment about pets and humans. So we tend to speak like and we can help ourselves speak like that, and it's also influenced by it. So there are a lot of studies um, showing that regardless, the AI agent can boldly sort of um, uh, give a warning, say, I'm a, AI agent. I'm not humans. Can say whatever they want. We ourselves cannot help it. We will definitely treat it as in a lot of aspects, right? Not all, but in a lot of aspects as if it is human, we just can't help it. So that's one issue. And we tend to project that way, and pet has a lot of emotion than AI ever will. That's probably true, and the problem is that we can't help it. Um, the controlling its behavior um, or trusting AI is a very different problem. It's not, it is a machine. And so trusting it, to me, has to be, it cannot be, for example, simply based on a record. For example, accounting what, is this agent being helpful to me so far? That we don't know because it's a machine. It's not, human beings who has a lot of baggage if they want to pretend. So for someone want to pretend to be your friend for a long, long period of time, it's very hard to do. For a human being, it's psychologically taxing, I guess. I don't know what's the right phrase for it. It's usually or most of the human are unable to do that for a long period of time. But for agent, it might be, it's a trivial thing to do, right? So um, So what I've been thinking about control is really controlling the mechanics of um, the agent's behavior. So that could mechanics can be related to sort of a records accounting, so that we can use the legal framework and liability. We mentioned a contract, right? If it is a contract, we can go back to liability to the organization, the human who deploy and train these models. So that is one avenue. We could also be sort of in computer security, is essentially put I think that, word come again, guardrail. So you have a fence around the agent, and the fence can be human can control that fence, or some human can control a fence. Maybe not us, but the IT manager maybe be able to control the fence. Um, and finally, on the alignment research or work is about, hey, how we would be able to then manipulate the training mechanism so that the agent would be less likely to go into this kind of a behavior we don't want to see. And anyway, so those are the potential avenues that we can work on this. Um, Anyway, I thought the comments Jeff made was very clear, and we just have to think in a way that is not thinking about human relationships, but basically a kind of a contest building towards a piece of software that we are dealing with. Jeff, Jim, do you guys want to maybe discuss the comments you had on the chat?
No, I agree with you, Wenjing. I think it's very important to view this as complex software that we have to validate and learn how to work with and know and understand, and not be tempted to see it in a way that we would validate human behavior despite all the frailties and flaws of human behavior.
Yeah, maybe I have an example like I mentioned earlier on the FDA in United States. Its expert panel, the advisory panel, is reviewing using chatbots. These are probably like a further trained chatbot on being a counselor. So they are being used for patients already. So they want to see what kind of regulations needed for that. And one of the approach that's being considered is treated as a medical device. Presumably, then a human doctor would prescribe it and monitor its behavior, etc. And we can think of this would be fitting for. So it is a treating as a piece of software. It's not anything else. It would regulate it just like any other software that is used for medical reasons. And then you would then have a also reliability because there's a human doctor involved. There's a hospital potentially who deploy these things, and a developer who manufacture this as a device, right? And within this ecosystem, we could do is that we can make this process more reliable, more efficient. How do we attribute, like, for example, how do we learn about accountability, like whose fault it is, for example? And so collecting data or defining what kind of data to collect. And how do we prevent cheating and stuff like that is fall into the scope of trust over IP, and that's what we could do. But we will need to go beyond simply digital identity, but to sort of the behavior of these systems, and that's what I would ask your feedback whether this working group should be working on. And maybe also related to our trust framework, right? So if we do it as a device, the framework becomes really documenting what does that mean and what kind of contract is involved and what kind of technical tools we can develop to help make that contractual enforcement more efficient, for example, clear and efficient and easy to enforce. Anyway. yeah, of about existence. So this is an area of so-called behavior in training, and there is a tendency or some examples. There's a few research paper already published. One of them talks about being shut down, and so that you could, if in your prompt you hint that you're going to shut it down, the agent would then try to go find the loopholes in the system to avoid a shutdown. And we'll go to quite extreme, actually. Um, that is a emergent behavior, and that's what the people tend to say that's misaligned. And so alignment, people use that term to mean the behavior, the innate behavior of the LLM or the agent. And um, so that's one area of work on that. There is also a well-known. This one is done very recently this year as well of hacking. So without you prompting, if you give a task for the agent to do, and the task is very difficult, and there is or a weakness or vulnerability somewhere in our software system, the agent eventually will find a way, or they will have incentive actually go find a way to hack it. And they will go to the extreme of actually deploying a known vulnerability to actively hack it and then achieve that goal. And of course, last 2 weeks ago, probably there is a real documented case of LLMs being intentionally, in this case, trained to do this kind of hacking. And that's also, and its success rate is about half, I think. So these are well documented real cases as well. So all of those are sort of alignment related issues, and guardrail issues are essentially software around guardrail, as in outside of the LM model itself, within the software. So I would consider like the work we do on combining MCP and TSP would be a type of guardrail. It is not controlling the agent itself, but on the fence, right? You were saying, well, we know the agent sometimes is not trustworthy and will do bad things. How do we prevent the damage if it try to do that? And so you are kind of boxing it in some kind of with some kind of fence.
Yeah, good points, Wenjing. Those cases of bots gone wild are troubling.
Yeah, but it would be good to sort of separate the. I know there are sometimes there's no hard line, but it'll be good to separate these two as we discuss, what area to work on.
Well, that does get into this area of scope creep because you're dealing with how things are trained in these complex systems and the input data they're given, and that's outside. There, the trusted relationship is almost like the trust between a teacher and a student.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Again, that's why I put in as a discussion is that because to me, if we only focus on one aspect of it, it seems like it's not going to solve majority of the problem. Will help in some way, but it may not be solving the majority of the problem. And second, it seems like we will have very little impact. Most of the work and the trend will continue. Um, it probably doesn't matter as much. And that's the downside if we stick it in our traditional role as in, digital um, identity and trust protocols, etc. We will be able to help like our work, sort of combining MCP and TSP is definitely helpful. We can design better delegation protocols that easier to fit into that. But delegation seems to me is not so much about um, safety, but more about sharing. His delegation is actually a way of facilitate sharing, right? We can delegate our power to these. Um, and we will be given the so-called control in the sense of like the user in the loop will ask your permission. But similarly, like if your lawyer is asking for your permission, what do you say? Or doctors ask you permission, you're going to say yes. And we don't fundamentally address that problem. And
Well, the the notion of identity versus trust is, of course, separate. There's very good reasons for giving an identifier to a bot, VLAI, whatever it might be, as opposed to whether or not you trust it or not is a different issue to some extent. The one thing that this discussion has brought up is that if your previous discussions with and interactions with a particular agent, which might be a single set of complex code, actually changes the behavior of that to customize it to you, is that a particular manifestation of identity from that instance of code, or is it the same code? It's
Yeah, identity will help. Again, the premises of the question is we assume identity will be done. We assume that minimum sharing will be done. But I'm arguing that it's not enough.
right.
Yeah. Like I said, the AI can try to pretend to be human, or AI can simply tell you, I am AI, and it will talk to you, you'll be influenced anyway. Doesn't really matter. Like, let's say we magically solve the fake issue, and now we always know it is AI agent we're talking to. That doesn't solve the very basic issue, higher level issue in semantics, which is we are easily influenced by a intelligent sounding
Yes.
agent. Um, so what I say, look, identity doesn't solve this problem. That's what I meant. Of course, we need to do identity. If without it, it will be even worse, right?
Yeah. What I was referring to was different facets of an identity, whereas the code might have been identified with some type of checksum or version of itself as some unique identity. But if that code behaves differently with different individuals based upon their interactions, then it's almost like there are, you know, different subsets of identity of the behavior of that agent, depending upon the interactions it's had with people. So it's almost like you can trust this particular bot to never do X, but if someone comes along and trains it to do X, and that bot, oh, that's pretty cute, I'm going to do X with you. That's a different aspect of that the normal thing about this bot that has this identity doesn't do X will not be true. I mean, this notion that bots can change their behavior based upon your interactions with them, that's what humans do also, of course. But the fact that it learns this means that just giving an identity to the bot doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to do the same thing to everybody.
Oh, of course, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Bots are not humans.
Yeah.
Some human can able to, we can, in limited fashion can have different personalities or different. There's there's a limit to how much we can, human
Yeah.
can do it easily, right? But bots can, that's trivial. That's exactly what they do. If you remember, what's the movie Her, right? In the end of it,
Yeah.
the AI agent, is of course it is playing a billion roles concurrently.
Right.
Yeah. Um, and so that's the nature of the beast. And um, I thought to have some impact on this more fundamental question, we might want to start to think about, beyond identity and beyond data sharing, for example, but further on the behavior of managing the behavior of the agents.
Yes.
That's the argument there anyway. I do agree that that's not our traditional role for trust of IP.
Well, there's one thing that strikes me looking at sharing of data is, and I'm finding and being forced to because I'm using ChatGPT very heavily in terms of coming up with a data schema, JSON schema for travel. Um, and that is, have a portable context, right? So, I mean, I'm sure we all run into this problem that, you know, you have 3 hour long discussion with it, and then suddenly it slows down to a crawl, and you have to capture all the stuff, dump it in a markdown file, and start a new session and hand it back because it runs out of tokens. Um, but it strikes me that part of the information in terms of disclosure is if you say, okay, you are going to work in my sandbox. And when you're finished this processing, you're going to hand me that box back. In other words, your only access to that is in that. So you're carrying your context. You're not leaving it up in the cloud. You're not leaving it with the agent. Is that it's something that sits in your wallet. So that's one potential way of selective disclosure. It's extremely
Yeah,
time limited.
but
You
if
have
you
only
have
get
a
access.
session like you today, you have session with ChatGPT, you got no say whatsoever on where that data sits. Even if you keep it in
No,
your wallet, you have no control on the other end, right?
But that's why,
but yeah, and that's exactly the point I made earlier is that you can micro share all you want, but
You
if you've
can
got to have
exactly. I
information,
would just add them
data,
all together and
that's right.
that's
You know,
that's why the small LLMs or the localized models for your dedicated use will protect that. If you don't, if you
yeah,
put things on the cloud, if you put things on the cloud, there, it's like, okay, that's just like you've basically shared your preferences with the ad tech. I mean, it knows everything. But if you have I think that what's emerging is this so-called sovereign AI or AIs that are local to your limited purpose and scope that you can control the information that they have, and they don't share those with the big global public AI.
yeah, you're saying the same thing, uh, but with different words. Yes, I mean that I think is the intent is that
Yes.
you've got layers of agents, and all the heavy lifting gets done on your box, and then specific requests going to
so
generally.
if that's the approach, then we should be working on how to make I don't know the term, but sovereign or edge or personal AI viable,
Yeah. Well,
right?
you can almost take DeFi and call it
That will
D.
still be beyond the scope of trust of IP.
Right.
Um, and there's a numerous argument that's very unlikely. Um, it would mean that we need to somehow disentangle from the network, and very few of us are able to do that. I'm sure there are some people probably today, living in off-grid somewhere, but majority of people cannot do that.
But this is where technology is going to change some things in the future. Just
Right.
look what the iPhone did to compare it to the IBM 360.
Yeah. And so if we go down that route, we potentially be thinking about a model where you have a small but still very, small but very royal AI to you running on your, say, smartphone, right? Future of this version of the smartphone. And you somehow control that. And then that mediates your sharing with other
Right.
agents. You will
Yeah.
still need to deal with other agents. You cannot say, well, I want my travel, all within myself too. It just doesn't work. In the end, you have to deal with others.
Well, other agents being other websites like reservation systems, whatever they might be, just like we do now.
But the website, of course, behind it, there will be an agent in it, isn't it?
Well, it is now.
Of course, right? So I'm assuming in that case you're dealing with other agents, and I think we come back. I mean, a little bit of improvement, but it will come back to the same problem.
Yeah. Anyway, I joined late, but interesting discussion. Thanks, Wenjing.
Sure, sure. And I think we will have a issue of whether um, we know something, whether we that's enough, or we should trying to look to a big picture and trying to help in, have some impact over there.
Yep. Cool.
Great discussion. Thank you. We do have 2 more weeks, I think, before Christmas. And so that's the 11th and 18th. How about a quick vote? Do we have both? Do we want to keep the 18th? Or we want to cancel the December 18th as well?
I'm happy with doing both. The 18th is not that close to Christmas. It's a week later, so
Okay. Any other opinions on the 18th?
Yeah, I think it should be fine. Like maybe also try, like planning for 2026.
Yeah. I think the 18th would be our last meeting in that case. And so our last meeting, there was an idea of sort of a Christmas special of simply, maybe come up with examples and shows. We won't be open with that. Um, and so that would be the agenda for the 18th. Mocktails, yeah, a AI agent mocktail party or something like that. But anyway, think about what we could do on the very last meeting, and then next meeting, I think. I hope we can report maybe a summary of what we have done for this year and what we could do next year. And so that would be something we can discuss as well. Again, today's topic will probably continue, and we can come up with some examples, maybe proceed on this discussion to something more concrete. Does that sound good for the 2 meetings this year?
Yeah, that's great.
All right, great. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Here's a-
Bye-bye.
See you next time. Bye bye.